Facebook takes a firm new stance on anti-vaxxing. The Ontario government is set to cut teaching jobs down, and people find creative new ways to dodge anti-copyright infringement laws. This is Marco Perri, and welcome to the Perri Platform. What's up, lovely people of the internet? Welcome to the show today, and we've got a lot of things to talk about, so let's dive right into the first topic I wanted to discuss, and it's in correlation to Facebook's new policy and firm stance they're having towards anti-vaxxing on their platform. So they really made two changes. The first one is that they're no longer going to be accepting paid advertisements from anti-vaxxing groups. This means you'll no longer be forced to see the horrendous, misleading anti-vaxxing propaganda that they're posting. And on top of that, they're also taking measures to throttle organic anti-vaxxing posts. So what this means is any types of posts your friends make that are in relation to anti-vaxxing, or even groups you visited, sometimes you see at the bottom of your page something like suggested groups. Anti-vaxxing has been blacklisted from all of this, and it's all really an attempt to reduce the visibility of anti-vaxxing on Facebook, because one of the major things behind this movement is actually social media. It's propelled the anti-vaxxing notions and brought it to the forefront of popular discussion to the masses. So one thing to note about anti-vaxxing is that it's beyond a doubt scientifically disproved. This group has made great strides to try and convince people that vaccinating your children increases the risk of them developing autism, which is completely absurd. There's been new studies released seemingly every month where the sample size keeps increasing and the results remain the same. There is no direct correlation between vaccinating your children and them developing autism, but yet this group holds firm, mostly in part due to confirmation bias, which is where the social media platforms come in. They'll see a post from someone random claiming that, vaccinations cause autism to spring up in my children, and they'll take this as hard evidence. And the one thing to note about confirmation bias is that in the age of the internet, it is easier than ever to find things that reinforce your current notions. Like, honestly, if you're really determined to prove something to someone, you can find just about any crazy Facebook group or social media account that is posting stuff like that, but it really comes down to the quality of your proof. If everything you're talking about is subjective and there's no scientific data to back it up, well, we can safely confirm that it's wrong. And in this case, even more so, because the data doesn't just not confirm it, it actually disproves it entirely, that there is no link between the two. And it was becoming quite harmful to a lot of people online. Like, it pretty much reached mass conspiracy theory status, and more people were joining the movement day after day, and it was disheartening to see these people becoming disillusioned on such a grand scale. But there were some interesting opinions against Facebook's recent move, and it seems like a lot of people are considering this a partisan issue, and they're citing a very common phrase where they feel like these social media platforms and our tech overlords like Facebook, Google, and Twitter should be politically impartial. They shouldn't be taking sides, and I actually agree with that statement. Facebook and Google should be impartial, because if you think about it, Google and Facebook could actually determine the results of an election. Let's say Google, Facebook, Twitter all band together and decided to eliminate all traces of conservatism, no more conservative parties, no more Google search results for these people, no advertisements for these people. Well, guess what? I can assure you that the conservatives wouldn't do too well in the upcoming election, and that's too much of a power to place on these subjective platforms. So 100% agree with you there. They should be impartial, but this is not a political issue in the least. Anti-vaxxing has no political party affiliation. It's not as if it's something like taxes where people believe that high taxes are better for the economy or low taxes are better for the economy, and you have a party like the conservatives who rep one side and liberals who rep another. Anti-vaxxing doesn't have something like that. There's no party that condones anti-vaxxing. It's simply not political. And if you look at the stats, about 10% of conservatives believe in anti-vaxxing, 10% of liberals believe in anti-vaxxing. It's not a political thing. It seems to just be a misinformed belief that people seem to have developed over time, due in part to these Facebook ads that they have now banned. Let me make one thing clear though. I am perfectly fine with you believing whatever you want to believe. Canada is a free country and you can do as you wish as long as it's in accordance with the law. But something like anti-vaxxing doesn't just take into consideration you. It's a community issue, and even more direct than that, it's not you choosing to not vaccinate yourself. Oftentimes, it's parents choosing to not vaccinate their own children, which puts them at risks of developing severe diseases that can lead to their death. And on top of that, you can bring mass epidemics to cities all around the world, as we've seen from the numerous measles outbreaks that are happening, the revival of polio. Diseases that should have been long extinct are making a comeback due to mass consumer ignorance. People are afraid of vaccinations now, and that should not be a thing, because what it does is it brings in a concept called herd immunity. And what that does is it makes sure that the majority of people in a community are immune to a certain strand of disease. So the few people left over who couldn't get vaccinated due to a weak immune system or age are less likely to be infected because the majority of the population is already immune. And because of that, there's only such few targets for the disease to infect that it becomes unlikely that it even reaches those people. And this is what led to the mass extinction of plenty of diseases that has plagued humanity for so long. And now we're reviving them because people don't know how to read scientific journals. It's absolutely ludicrous, completely backwards thinking, and honestly, we need to change this immediately. Now, here's another example of a related situation that involves something that you would think is optional, but it's really not, because it has impacts that far outweigh just your personal ones. So, mowing your lawn. Simple household chore that no one enjoys doing. But a lot of cities make it a bylaw, because if you don't mow your lawn, it's not just your property value that decreases, but also your neighbors. Because now home buyers will come visit the houses and realize that there's a slob living next door, and that'll bring down the house property. So one thing you have to take into consideration is the spider web of effects that transpire from making decisions like this. Not vaccinating your kid can lead to outbreaks. And at the same time, why would you even take that chance with your child? It's so beyond me to expose them to things such as measles and polio. My uncle actually did have polio, and he lived in a time where these vaccinations were not readily available. If you could put him in today's world, he would be absolutely confused and bewildered that people were rejecting a polio vaccination because they believe it'll give someone autism. To conclude, Facebook, I applaud you for taking a stand against this despite the backlash. It may be the only good thing Facebook has done in literally years. So there you go, pat on the back. Moving on to a more controversial story now. So there's been headlines in the past couple weeks of the Ontario government making massive changes and alterations to Ontario's education plan. These changes range from things like OSAP, which affects obviously university and college students, to recently things such as altering the maximum class sizes for students in high school and elementary school. They've gotten a lot of flack for this, and I'll summarize quickly the change that they have proposed. So for grades 9 to 12, there was a limit previously of, well, not a limit, but it was an average. The classes would typically have averages of 22 students in each one. Now they want to up that to 28 students in each class. And from grades 4 to 8, the increase will go from 23.84, the previous average, to a new one of 24.5 students. So not really that much of an impact for grades 4 to 8, but a lot of people have taken offense to the grade 9 to 12 change. That's an increase of an average of 6 students in each classroom now. Another consequence of this increase in class sizes is the reduction in teaching jobs needed now. So there's been hundreds of jobs that are now being put on the chopping block, and teacher unions are obviously up in arms. Teachers are not pleased with this recent announcement, but it seems to me that there's been a lot of bending of facts to suit certain political agendas, really. And I kind of want to dispel that for you guys. So the first thing you'll see is a lot of people talking about Ontario is poised to cut teacher jobs, and I think that itself is an inaccurate representation of the situation. It's more so a freeze rather than a cut, and the reason why I say that is because according to the Conservative Manifesto and document they've released, they're not planning on firing any current teachers. The strategy is more so that teachers who retire, those who quit, and those who leave the organizations willingly will not get new teachers hired to take their place. So it's not as if the current teachers are at risk of losing their jobs or anything like that. It's just more so in the future that they will freeze hiring until the demand and supply is more in line. Because due to this increase in class size, there really is no need for teachers at this point in time at the same levels that they were prior. And on top of that, they've set this change to take out over the course of 4 years. So it's not going to be an immediate impact. It's rather a slow rollout that's going to happen. People are trying to mislabel this as if next year 400 teachers are going to be out of work, and that's really not the case here. So now we get to the intellectual debate of whether this was a good move or not, and I honestly think you could argue both ways for it. And the main factor that makes me lean towards that it may have been a decent move is the increase in online learning that's now taking over the high school system. So previously, back even when I was in high school, it was very limited offerings. There was not too many online courses you could take, but nowadays it's making a massive push and the numbers are moving up quite frequently. There's so many classes and so many options, and if you think about it, online based courses, you can have as big of a class size in those as you want, and that's actually affecting the average increase as well. This conception that everything is going to be the same as it was when we were in high school is not accurate. It's not an accurate picture of future learning environments, because being in an online course, it really makes no difference if you're enrolled by yourself with an average class size of 1, or if there's 100 students with you, an average class size of 100. From the student perspective, it doesn't make a difference in terms of teaching when you consider marking and the amount of time left to put into, let's say you have an essay that they have to mark 100 essays instead of 1. But if you want to use realistic examples, now they'll be marking an extra 4 to 6 essays, which doesn't seem to be too much of an increase to me, to be honest. Especially because there's new technology available to teachers that make teaching a little bit easier. And a lot of the unions were complaining that it's an undue increase. Teachers now have to take on 25% more work because there's going to be an increase of roughly that in each class size. And that itself is not really a valid argument either. Because due to these new tools teachers have, such as online lectures, video recording, and even things like Khan Academy, teachers don't even have to teach that much anymore. I've had classes where teachers simply play a video in class and they sit down. On top of that, if it's an online course, they don't have to even go to class. All their lectures are pre-recorded and all the tools are available online for students to use at their own disposal. The time saved from not even teaching a class should definitely give you enough extra ammunition to take on a couple extra essays here and there, and that's even assuming that essays are a core part of the course. Oftentimes it's simply a multiple choice thing, or I've seen the change for a lot of class discussion marks that are given out now, which doesn't really require too much reading. It's just making sure students are posting something on the class forums talking about the course content. Also, if you want to forecast even further into the future, let's not talk about the immediate 10-year span where I think online courses are going to make a tremendous jump. How about 25 years down the road where AI might start teaching classes? I see teaching as a job where the demand is set to steadily decrease over time. Definitely there's a niche where people would need a physical instructor to be there for them, and that's the one thing I would say is the negative of these class increases. Obviously, it's if it's non-online course and you're in a classroom, you're used to 22 people in the class, now you're going to have to deal with 26. Yeah, it might take away a little bit of extra time the teacher could use to focus on a more niche group of students, a more smaller group, but at the same time, it doesn't seem to be an astronomical increase to me. A lot of people are freaking out as if 10 students are going to be joining the class now, and I definitely get that. It's a little bit of more attention the teacher has to divide among more students, but to me, this change is something that's in line with future trends, and I actually think the conservatives are thinking very forward here with this move. It's something that I think might have to be done. They might be performing it early, maybe a little bit too early because AI is very far off, but the immediate trend of online courses and technology in the classroom has definitely impacted the demand for teachers. But funny enough, they introduced this change at the same time that they banned cell phones in, I believe it's high school and elementary school, which is interesting to me because I'm here vouching for them, telling them that, the move can be justified because of all these technological increases in class, but at the same time, it seems like they're kind of hindering that a little bit themselves. So I can see both ways for that itself. That was another proposition they put in the plan along with the increased class sizes. They want to stop people from using cell phones in class, and it's really an interesting proposal because even when I was in high school and elementary school, phones were already banned. It was already not commonplace to pull out your phone while a teacher's lecturing. You felt guilty and you knew you were doing something wrong. It was only a matter of the teacher enforcing the rule that differed. Some didn't really care, some did. But one thing's for sure, using your cell phone during a lecture is definitely distracting, and you won't be able to learn at the same level as you would be if you were giving it your full attention. And I see this being a major issue for students who are younger, such as elementary school kids, because let's admit it, like young people don't have the greatest willpower, and it's highly likely if they have their cell phone and they're able to use it, they would much rather play Fortnite or PUBG than listen to the teacher speak. They'd be playing Flappy Bird, Angry Bird, any type of bird game, and it would take away from their learning, and I really wonder how that impacts the future generation's ability to retain information. especially in terms of attention span, because as we've seen from recent scientific articles, the average attention span keeps dipping as the generations grow. And it's kind of disheartening to me because you can almost 100% attribute some of that to the increase in social media and instant gratification that cell phones provide. If you're on your cell phone, you're missing out on critical skills that you need to develop in elementary school, such as how to read at advanced levels, how to do basic arithmetic. I think the move was questionable in terms of high school students because, they're a little bit more mature. I think they can fully recognize that them being on their cell phones while the teacher's trying to teach is not the best thing to do. Elementary students are a little bit more impressionable. I can see them wanting to find ways to break the rules, but in high school and certainly college and university where you pay to be here, it's really a waste to be using your cell phones. It's interesting to see how the Ontario government plans to roll out this change. From the last news report that I read, it seemed like they wanted to leave implementation out to the respective schools, and it seems like it really is up to the teachers to enforce these rules themselves. So to me, it doesn't seem like too much of a change. Already a lot of schools and classrooms ban cell phones. Now it's more of a provincial ban, but it's still up to those teachers to issue the punishments for them. So who knows how it's going to go. It's an interesting move. Definitely one thing that's unquestionable is it's better for students to not use their cell phones in class. Was a ban the right move? Seemed pretty extreme to me, to be honest, but maybe that shock value is what students need to realize that it's not something they should be doing. One thing that's for sure, though, I don't think harsh consequences should be given out to students who do choose to use their phone. Maybe confiscate their phone for the rest of the class if you catch them, but anything beyond that, I don't think it would fly in today's day and age. My overall impressions of these articles is that they've been highly sensationalized and they're really not as drastic as people are making them out to be. The increase seems minimal to me, and who knows, like as I've said, the growing depreciation in needs for teachers seems to be a factor that they've considered. And with the online course movement and the AIs coming into play now and more self-learning initiatives, I think it could work out. I don't think it was the worst move the Ford government has made, that's for sure. Now, you're not going to believe this next article. So people are starting getting clever. Online illegal streaming of movies and TV shows has been taking a recent crackdown from companies, and copyright infringement suits are up and trending. These companies want you to pay for their material, and a lot of websites, like I don't want to name them here, but if you type in like watch free movies, a bunch of them will definitely come up. And recently they've been shutting down because these companies don't want them to have their movies being streamed for free. Same with Pirate Bay. It seems like every other day they're getting taken down and coming back up again. So what have people done internationally to avoid these charges? Interestingly enough, these people are now watching videos, movies, recent releases on porn streaming websites. Yes, you heard that right. So something like XXX videos now has people uploading the Avengers to them. Recent releases like Captain Marvel are available for you to watch, and it's actually pretty genius, to be honest. So as these copyright agents are drastically searching for places where they can find their movie and issue a takedown warrant, right under their noses on porn websites, people are watching these videos and uploading them in secret. Well, it's not so much of a secret now because articles are starting to pick up on it because it's kind of funny, but this might spell the end of that, to be honest. If you want to keep it a secret. Don't tell people about it because now everyone's talking about it. And I even asked some of my friends and I had no idea this was a thing. They already knew about this. They've watched movies on these porn websites themselves, and I thought that was mind-blowing. Pretty genius, but not so genius to expose the secret like this. And honestly, I don't even know what to say. It was a good run while it lasted. So this is a public PSA to Netflix. Step up your game. People are on here going to porn websites now to watch movies and TV shows. That's your direct competitor. Get some more shows on Netflix and stop depriving us of our much needed entertainment that helps us binge watch seasons and procrastinate to our fullest. So let's move on to a little bit of a casual conversation. I want to dedicate this one to my fellow students out there and touch a little bit on fiscal responsibility and the importance of saving a little bit. It sounds boring, but trust me, if you hear me out and take this advice to heart, you might find yourself thanking me 20 years down the road. The first thing that I urge everyone to pretty much do is open a TFSA account. And for those of you who don't know, it's a tax-free savings account, which means anything you contribute and everything you take out is tax-free. Every year you get a limit to it. So it's not unlimited. You can't put in like $10 million into a TFSA and withdraw that tax-free. So So last year you could put in 5,500. This year I think they upped it to 6,000. And the beautiful thing is that it's cumulative. So if one year you don't max out fully, it rolls over to the next year. So you never really lose any amount. But it's always good to try and keep up to date with that. If you can max it out, max it out. And here's the thing you should be doing: putting into a typical savings account with marginal 1%, 2%, 3% interest rates is okay. It's a good start for your money to start growing a little bit, but at most, all it's really doing is keeping up with inflation. If you really want to start saving for the long run, have some money stored up so you can maybe buy a car, put down a down payment for a house when you graduate, stuff like that, you should really look into some mutual funds. And there's a lot of them out there. Personally, I use Tangerine. They have really low MER, which is the management expense ratios. It's the amount of money Tangerine takes basically for managing the portfolio. Mutual funds are a collection of stocks, and sometimes you can get bonds in them if you want to be safe. I don't really recommend that. At this point in your life, take some risks, get some stocks, and get some gains. The one I'm in right now, the average return is about 10%. And think about that. You put in $1,000 maybe, that's all you can afford, that's fine, start somewhere. $1,000 gains 10% every year, roughly, average. $100 on top, okay. Keep putting more money into that, because now that $100 is going to make 10% on it, and it's a compounding effect. If you start young, you start saving now, you can be set for your future, and it's something I highly recommend. It's really tempting as students to blow money, buy pizza slices here, Starbucks, mocha latte, frappuccino with ice cream on top, but maybe once a week you can stop doing that, take the $10 and put it into a TFSA account. Start investing, start saving some money. Your future self will thank you. And that's it for today's episode. Thank you for joining me on the Perri Platform. See you next time.